Charlene, is it fair to say the FDA is playing hardball when it comes to approving safer nicotine products?
Yes, that is because of what's written in the statute. The Tobacco Control Act 2009 established for any new tobacco product to be marketed in the U.S. market, there are only 3 pathways: substantial equivalence exempt, and the pre-market tobacco application, PMTA. So the first 2 pathways only apply to product already in the U.S. market before 2007, called grandfathered product, or you want to make any revisions or changes to those products. So those products obviously were tobacco product by tobacco companies. Any novel product came later, like e-cigarettes, nicotine pouch, can only be authorized to market by the PMTA pathway. And the standard for those market to get product getting the market are different. So for SE, you only have to demonstrate your new product does not raise different questions of public health. So it's basically say, cigarettes is harmful, but as long as your new product is worse than your existing predicate product, then you can be authorized. But for PMTA, the standard is different, is APPH, appropriate for the protection of public health. So this is in population level. You have to evaluate the risk of benefit for both users and non-users. And because of that, of course, that's why where we are now, we have, I think, hundreds of cigarettes being authorized through the substantial equivalent pathway. And there are 26 million PMTA applications submitted to FDA. Only 41 ends product authorized from 5 companies. And so that is, I think the statute, FDA is really, they hands are bound by the statute, but how to interpret the APPH standard and how to apply that in PMTA applications, FDA definitely has the discretion. I think that, so to answer your question, yeah, it is much harder for
the safer nicotine product.
Yes.
Now that's amazing. So basically what you're saying is that if a new cigarette can get authorized through a substantial equivalent pathway, it doesn't need to be appropriate for the protection of public health. But whereas if it's a nicotine vape, it must be appropriate for the protection of public health.
Exactly, yeah.
So that's crazy. I mean, so cigarettes kill. How come they're not under the more stricter standard?
I guess I'm not a historian in how the TCA been enacted, but I'm sure there are lots of competing interests, public health and the tobacco industry lobby. I think that's why they could be able to reach consensus, as we know how law was made, right? There are all kinds of interest groups, and this is also to protect the tobacco companies to prevent the future competitions for non-tobacco company like ends product and the pouch product. Yeah.
So tell us a bit about Riskwise Solutions, your company.
Riskwise Solution is a scientific consulting company. We provide the full PMTA services to nicotine industry. I founded the Riskwise is because I witnessed and saw lots of mistakes industry made in doing the PMTA applications, and I feel I have, and also some of my really dear friends and colleagues, we have the understanding about the law, about the FDA guidance, and we have the industrial also consultant experience be able to help industry to navigate this very complex, also involving process, PMTA process.
So it's more than just toxicology testing then?
Yes, so we are doing mainly non-clinical, canonical SSA, product characterization and product performance and manufacturer control, like the documentation needed to provide to FDA to demonstrate your product is specified, designed for adult smokers, and also the manufacturers can consistently and make the product to meet the specifications, and also chemistry, stability, and toxicology plus risk assessment. But we also work with other behavior and clinical science teams to provide full service.
So you've pioneered the process of using, what is it called, quantitative risk assessment. What is that?
So risk assessment, quantitative risk assessment is a scientific process which integrates chemical and biological data to evaluate health risk of chemical exposure, both to individual and to population. It is a cornerstone for all the both U.S. regulatory agency and the international regulatory agency, basically safeguard our daily life, like drinking water, standard air quality, food safety, medical device, even pharmaceutical, the environment, contaminations. And I started in the tobacco industry over a decade ago. It's because I was hired by a company to basically to help to develop the QIA and apply in tobacco industry. We published the first paper in the industry to how to apply QIA in tobacco regulatory submissions. And 2024, actually, FDA adopted the QIA as a consistent approach to evaluate toxicological risk for nicotine products like ends, pouch product, and compared to combustible and other product. And it become one of the key tools they use to evaluate if the product meet the APPH standard.
Why is an event like the K&H Symposium here important?
I think it is important is because evaluate the QIA is basically the concept is just like applied to everything. For instance, food. FDA does not regulate if you have when you buy a cookie from your corner store or from a superstore, FDA does not regulate. Okay, every time you have a new cookie recipe, you need to go through a pre-market application to demonstrate, right? And instead, they regulate what goes into that cookie. Is that food ingredient? Is that generally considered safe for human consumption? And the process, and also do you have a clean process to evaluate them, to make the cookies, to make sure you don't have any contaminations. So it's the same concept they use in nicotine product. For instance, ENDS product. ENDS product consists of e-liquid, which contain e-liquid ingredient, and also has a device which heating up the e-liquid to deliver aerosol. Aerosol could have some called HPAC, harmful and potentially harmful constituents. So FDA basically the QIA process is if we know each of those constituents in the ENDS product, that will help us to understand will this cause a concern, a toxicological concern in terms of increase the chance of cancer for consumers.
Are safer nicotine products generally safe?
Oh yeah, in general speaking, a nicotine product, if they are using the good quality material made and also from a well controlled manufacturing process, nicotine product, including e-cigarettes and nicotine pouch, they are 95 or 99% have lower risk, both cancer risk, non-cancer risk than combustible cigarette smoking. But they are some nicotine, but that's under the conditions the product is actually being made by responsible manufacturers. I have evaluated some of the data from counterfeiting product or from the product is just they do contain, some of them could contain like a very high level of toxicants like a formaldehyde, which is a human carcinogen, and also could contain very high level metal, chromium, nickel. It's because the manufacturer really irresponsible, use very poor material, don't have good temperature control of the product, or the metal part they use is very low quality. So that's why it's kind of corroding, release all the toxic metals. Yeah.
The outliers, though.
Yes, the outliers. Of course, those are the extreme cases, but they do exist. But it's because of that. That's why I think the public health and I would say the people not in favor of alternative products, no risk products. That's when if they find those data, but then they probably could become, they think this is what the product would be in the market. And we also see some of those publications. And also lots of publications, they also grab the media attention. You say, oh, we found such a high levels of metals in this. So, and even yesterday I saw a LinkedIn post that say popcorn corn because of someone using vapor, which is being a mess for over a decade, but it's still out there. Yeah.